Hello there and welcome. In this video I want to introduce to you 10 different necromancy builds for Age of Wonders 4. We're going to be talking about one build per culture, so at the end of this video I hope you have an idea for each culture how to go undead with them. Each one of the builds is my personal favorite, the ones that I enjoyed most playing around with. Each one of them is actually tried and tested, and here goes number one. Let's start with the Feudals. Sadly, I gotta say, the Feudals are, for me, personally thinking one of the worst matches of Necromancy. But when we add in the Monarchy Splice, the Monarch's Dominion thing is really a tasty one. It'll reduce the upkeep of the units around your leader hero by 100%. This means this specific breed of necromancy will have an easy time picking up the really strong units like Bone Dragons and Bone Horrors and Banshees and Corrupt Souls and just stack them on top of your main army. You'll basically get 5 free high-tier units to play with. This is one thing that we can work with. The other thing is I figured that the rest of the feudal kit really goes pretty well with a standard tanking objective. So pair it up with either Materium, so you have the economy bonuses and the stat bonuses, or Order works alongside pretty decently too. This way you'll get a lot of healing, a lot of control over free cities. It's up to you. I would always try to sit between Shadow, Materium and Order with a Feudal Necromancy build, at least in my taste. I think there's a lot more working there, but this has been my favorite. Number 2, High Culture Necromancy. So with the High Culture, I personally like to utilize the Awakened trait as much as I can. And in this, well, Battle Mage and Archery builds work for the Necromancy branch on the High Culture really well. This is because of the recent rework of Necromancy, where we don't have the Necromancy bonuses exclusive for battle mages. It is now also available for the archers to go for necrotic projectiles, and while we have only limited access to things like Joy Siphoners, you know, skeletal units don't necessarily get racial transformations up until way later in the game, we still have a certain bias towards battle magic in a high culture build. But since you also can add in quite nice archer enchantments, in short, use the undead troops as a solid frontline. I really like to go for Corrupt Souls in that regard, or any other things that we dig out. I mean, at the end of the day, Bone Horrors make excellent frontliners too, due to the fact that they shed off a unit when they drop on 50%, and use that just to create a wall of corpses that your hard-hitting backline can strike from. Alternatively, I see that the High Culture also has a good potential in going into tanky business, as this works out well, similar to the Feudal as I have talked before. Now, let's talk number 3, Architects. So with the Architects, it's a very mixed bag. The add-ons that you can pick and will pick for Necromancy are all as different as the aspects that you will pick. But I discovered for myself that Architects love a Necromancy playstyle that focuses around expansionism. This is due to the Affinity Incarnate thing. You want to expand as fast as possible towards magic materials, get those cities rolling, and get those monuments. The key strategy between the Architects and Necromancy is, for me, to use the Affinity Incarnate trait on your low tier undead and make insanely potent units out of that. Because once you have a couple of stacks of Affinity Incarnate, your tier 1 skeletons turn into powerhouses damage-wise. You also have, on top of that, Resilient Incarnation, which allows you for very low prices to boost up the defenses to ridiculous amounts once you have a couple of monuments running again. Therefore, when you want to play Architects, I strongly recommend to pick a side build to your own liking. There's really a lot of flexibility and adaptability in there, as it is typical for the Architects. But the thing here is, try to work your way through the society traits. Things like adept settlers, for example, are really, really good. Or also great builders doesn't hurt either. As a last note, Materium is a strong fit to this culture because it allows you on tier 3 to create magic materials artificially, which is boosting your wonder production insanely. Alternatively, I found underground starts to be surprisingly good for these guys too, just as some food for thought. Number 4, the Oathsworn. So just yesterday I did a video about the Oathsworn, and also Necromancy has been featured there. Oathsworn I think work best with the Strife Oath, simply because the Warrior Soul gives you substantial fire damage bonuses for being not outnumbering the enemy. Now all you need to do is package your skeleton swarms in army packs that don't outnumber the enemy and start whittling them down with several attacks. You can't even go for auto-resolving these if you don't have the patience to do that. The fun part is, as long as the soul income of yours is high enough, you can inflict severe damage with this playstyle, because you just will deal more damage than the enemy. And as Necromancer, you have a steady flow of units that you can just throw at the enemy. Soul income is the major thing here though for this build, so keep an eye out for that. And as a side walk here with the tomes, I would strongly recommend to go tome-wise for something that just boosters up the troops that you use. Something with unit enchantments that you like. There's many, many ways you can go for, but the main takeaway here is to utilize the skirmishing playstyle of the Warrior Soul with tons of skeletons that you just fling at the enemy. Number 5, Barbarians. So the Barbarians are a very, very straightforward culture right now. I expect them to get reworked in some degree, but right now in the Archon Prophecy patch that we are currently running, the Savage Strike mechanic is the one that I like to utilize most around Necromancy builds. I mean, this is quite binary with these guys. All Barbarian builds want to utilize that, but here goes. At the end of the day, we can apply all the Barbarian bonuses to all of our units via Brutal Mark. Therefore, you just straightforward can funnel yourself either into Materium, where you get solid ways of lowering the enemy's defenses, and on Artificing we get a nice way of boosting up our critical hit chances. Alternatively, to get the same goal, interestingly enough, we can also go for a Splice of Order. It works quite decently. When we pick up the Chaplain unit, they have the Fortune blessing, and generally every support branch that allows you to increase critical hit chances is a good fit for this build. As a last thing that I want to point out, because it's a classic, the Tome of Revelry brings you very, very nice supporters that fit into this scheme as well. Just keep in mind one thing: the morale gaining effects of the Revelry Tome are way less potent on the undead units of yours, and therefore I found actually Order and Materium to be much more interesting partners for this build. Generally, Materium and Order have been dominating the combo potential with Necromancy generally in my build tinkering so far. Let's move over to number 6, the Primals. So here my favorite revolves around the Glacial Mammoth and utilizing Cryomancy. The Primals all have a terrain focus, and with this one you gain a big advantage in 2 reasons. For one, you will be totally free to pick up whatever social traits you want, because your build is pretty mono shadow. You pick up the Necromancy tomes, and since we want to play Cryomancy alongside with that, we pick up even more shadow tomes. Therefore, if you want to have a different Materium influence, try to pick up as many society traits outside of the box as possible. I find that this build is extremely well played with a focus on summoning, because you just have a lot of potential there to do so. The really cool part about that, pun intended, is that Cryomancy is extremely potent in creating knowledge and mana. Since all of our undead units are quite mana hungry, this allows you to just feed the machine. On top of that, the Cold Dark Tome eventually gives you Frost Spires, which even crank out even more knowledge for your icy terrain. So, in short, this is a very, very economy strong build that will push out research points like crazy, because you also benefit from the Materium, not the Imperium upgrades of Shadow that give you even more knowledge income. So all in all, it's a very nice summon heavy branch that cranks out research points like crazy. Society wise, I would really recommend to use these points here as the side splices that you want, because this is honestly the affinity the affinity beelining in this build is probably its biggest weakness. Number 7, the Reavers. So here for necromantic Reavers, I personally just love to go very straightforward with just skeletons, throwaway undead units, and ranged unit enchantments, and just blast the hell out of your enemies. With the Reavers, we have the chance to use the many skeletons and whatever we produce to mark the enemy, which makes our ranged attackers hit harder and more reliably. All in all, this is really something that where the Reavers don't really need that much more interaction with, because at the end of the day, these guys are probably the strongest ranged units in the game. At least they compete for that title in some degree. On top of that, you have really strong backline support with the mage locks. Personally, big fan of the dragoons as well, and between the lines of undead, they can move in position very well. The key to success for this is to have, from your 18 units of a full troop stack, 12 of them are quality, 6 of them are trash. Trash that you just use to distract the enemy with and refill it after the battle again. Therefore, your build wants to have two things. Tome-wise, you want to booster up your ranged combat and have a good eye on things that help you out in terms of economy, because you will be quite hungry for gold, hungry for a lot of resources. I found Materium to be here again a good partner and order. Did we hear that before? Necromancy is a little bit cornered in that regard, in my opinion at least. Now, number 8, the Industrious build. Here, I love to go for a classic tanking and spanking setup where we take full advantage out of the capabilities to destroy the enemy's morale with Doom Herald build. So, since we are very resilient, our folks take full advantage out of Joy Siphoners, crew weaponry, and the Corrupt Soul just melds into the whole build perfectly fine. Here, you want to lean heavier into Order. I found this to be the perfect match. So you just get a lot of heal. You can use Zeal for even more damage increasers. You can use all of these Order tomes alongside to either boost your stats, get some interesting units, especially for an undead scheme. Paladins are really something. Or just go for the Tome of Beacon's Mighty Meek. There's so much weight in there to get yourself a punch and sustainability. It is crazy. I personally like this one a lot, and I think it is fundamentally one of the strongest, possibly playable necromancy builds currently, due to the fact that it just grinds down everything while being very hard to kill. Now, number 9, the Dark Culture. So for these guys, I like to go for a necromancy build that utilizes alchemy. So alchemy is a tome that requires you to have a DLC. I was a little bit sad about that, but in all honesty, Dark Culture is currently a little bit at the end of the food chain. But here it goes. This is actually quite good. Tome of Alchemy allows you to inflict Miasma. Miasma automatically inflicts Weakened. Weakened is the condition that the Dark Culture takes healing and increased damage out of. Everything besides that, on top of every other spell in the Tome of Alchemy, does give you a nice advantage in the research arms race, it gives you a really, really good ranged unit, and you branch out automatically into blight damage on this end. Add in now the regular necromancy things that you do, and accompany now that with anything extra you want. Any extra element will be amplified by the Tome of Alchemy, and at the same time, this tome amplifies your identity, your culture, even more. From that point on out, just go crazy either with mono necromancy or splice in something that you want on the other ends. It is very, very adaptable, with the advantage that your troops will be actually quite hard to kill if you use the miasma right. Miasma plus Dark Culture is an insanely potent combo, believe me. Now, number 10, the last thing with the Mystic Culture, straight up summoning. Summoning has, on the first glance, not so many things that are so interesting for it, but there's one thing that I find to be insanely powerful, and that is the capability to use Echo Infusion to rank up your Magic Origin units. This means we can turbocharge the experience of all of our undead units. So just to give you an impression about that, the Bone Horror in itself is already a pretty impressive unit, but if we look at its traits, it's a Magic Origin unit, so it qualifies for this. And check this out. So when we turbocharge this beastie, not only do we get 50 HP more, this is more than half of the HP that it will get extra. There's also a plethora of different stat bonuses, resistance-wise, and it learns to sprint, it increases its damage, and just the resistances and HP alone will make this thing so much more potent. And you can do that again and again with the summoners, and things get even worse when you go for the higher tier, oops, wrong roster. When you go for the higher tier undead or undeadish units, as long as they have the Magic Origin tag, you can level them via this culture. Apart from that, accompany these guys with some evocation if you want to focus harder into the battle mage identity, or just meld it together with any frontline heavy enchantment things, fire, ice, whatever you want. It is very, very flexible because you start out with skeletons, and from that point out you can just opt into whatever you want. These guys, I personally think, in my opinion, are probably number one, competing with the Industrious and probably the Architects. I don't know. I find it really hard. To me personally, I find the Mystic and the Industrious Undead, Mystic and Industrious Necromancers to be the most potent combos, if you are interested in that. So, I hope this video gave you some food for thought. Let me know what you create, what you think you could do or would do differently. I'm all ears, because these were only my favorites. There's so much more to be created, and I'd love to hear what you created. So, leave me a like, leave me a subscribe, consider donating to the channel via Ko-fi or any other given means in the description box. Thanks a lot for all the help that I get from you guys, and of course I want to say thanks for watching this video up until the very end. Thanks for taking our time, and see you on the next one.